Hello, and welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're putting on our detective hats. We're going to be diving deep into our own DNA to unmask the shared genetic roots that link a whole bunch of different psychiatric disorders.
Okay, so let's start with the central mystery, the big question that scientists have been wrestling with for years. Why is it that conditions like depression, anxiety, ADHD, and schizophrenia so often show up together? You know, it's a pattern doctors see all the time, but the reason why has been a really tough nut to crack.
And we're not talking about some rare phenomenon here. This is a huge deal. The World Health Organization estimates that a staggering 1 in 8 people on the planet suffers from some form of psychiatric disorder. That's nearly 1 billion people. So you can see why getting to the root cause is one of the most urgent challenges in medicine today.
Now, to solve this mystery, we need to know the scientific name for what we're looking at, and that word is pleiotropy. It sounds kind of complex, but the idea is actually pretty simple. It just means that a single gene can have multiple jobs influencing several different things that might seem totally unrelated. It's the core idea that one little tweak in your DNA could raise your risk for more than one disorder.
So this brings us to the first piece of our puzzle, the shared genetic mystery. The high rate of what doctors call comorbidity, which is just a fancy way of saying having multiple conditions at once, it's like a big flashing sign pointing directly to a shared genetic source. So researchers launched this massive hunt for these pleiotropic genes. The investigation really focused in on these 8 major disorders. As you can see, they span a huge spectrum, from neurodevelopmental conditions like autism to mood and compulsive disorders. The idea was to cast a really wide net to find the genetic threads that might be connecting them all.
Okay, so this brings us to our genetic suspect list. You really have to think about this like a crime scene investigation. And what's the first thing you do? You identify every single person of interest. Well, in genetics, that means finding every single DNA variant that could possibly be involved.
To do this, scientists used a super powerful technique called a genome-wide association study, or GWAS for short. Think of it like a massive DNA scanner. They scanned the DNA of thousands and thousands of people and flagged 136 specific hotspots in the genome. These are areas that kept popping up as being linked to these disorders. These are our genetic crime scenes.
But here's where things get really tricky. Within those 136 crime scenes, there wasn't just one suspect. Get this, there were over 17,000 potential genetic culprits, these tiny little variations in the DNA code. It was totally impossible to know which of these were just innocent bystanders and which ones were the actual functional culprits causing the trouble.
So that leads to the next critical step in our investigation. How do you sort the real culprits from the massive crowd? This is where we move into the interrogation phase. We need a way to test each of these thousands of suspects to see if they actually do anything.
And the hero of our story is this incredible technology called a massively parallel reporter assay, or MPRA. Honestly, you can just think of it as a giant, high-tech interrogation room for your genes. It allows scientists to test thousands of these genetic suspects all at once to see which ones have a real, measurable biological effect. Specifically, if they have the power to turn other genes on or off.
And the results from this interrogation? Wow. They are absolutely striking. After testing over 13,000 of these variants, the MPRA technology narrowed the field dramatically. Only a tiny, tiny fraction, just 683 of them, turned out to be truly functional. Our suspect list just got a whole lot smaller.
So the scientists gave these 683 verified culprits a special name, MVARs. It just stands for Expression Modulating Variants. These are the ones, the genetic actors with a proven ability to actually change how genes work. And these are the focus of the rest of our investigation.
All right, now that we have our list of prime suspects, it is time to build a profile. What makes the variants that cause multiple disorders, those pleiotropic ones, what makes them different from the ones that are only linked to a single disorder?
And the answer they found is just fascinating. It turns out that the variants with these broad, pleiotropic effects, they have a fundamentally different way of operating inside the brain compared to their more specialized cousins. They play by a different set of rules.
So, the first major difference is where they work. The disorder-specific variants are specialists. They're active in very specific types of brain cells, doing one job. But the pleiotropic variants? Oh, they're generalists. They're active all over the place, across a whole range of different developing brain cells, which gives them a much, much wider sphere of influence.
But it's not just about where they work, it's also about what they control. The investigation found that they influence completely different tiers of the machinery inside our cells.
And check this out. This is the key difference in their strategy. Disorder-specific variants, they tend to just tweak proteins in smaller local networks. But the pleiotropic variants, the ones that affect many disorders, they go right for the top. They influence these highly connected hub proteins. You can think of them as the superconnectors of the cell. And by tweaking these major hubs, a single genetic variant can send ripple effects through the entire system, impacting all sorts of processes at once.
So, we've got the profile. We know how they work. But what does it all mean? Let's zoom out to the big picture and see why this all matters for our understanding of the brain.
You know, the study itself puts it best. This quote right here basically summarizes the entire detective story. The researchers are saying that this shared risk, this pleiotropy, it happens because these key genetic variants are regulating genes that are vital across many different stages of brain development, and they're plugged into the most highly connected protein networks.
So let's break it down. Here's the whole mechanism in 3 simple steps. First, these pleiotropic variants are generalists. They're active in lots of different developing brain cells. Second, they target the most important hub genes in the network. And third, this combination of broad activity and high-level influence, all happening during that critical window of brain development, is what creates the shared genetic risk for multiple different psychiatric disorders. And just like that, the mystery of pleiotropy is solved.
And this, of course, leaves us with a provocative and really hopeful final question for the future. If a single genetic mechanism can raise the risk for so many disorders, could we one day develop therapies that target these genetic hubs to treat multiple conditions at the very same time? This research has opened up a truly fascinating new door. Thanks for joining us on The Explainer.